In 1991, the legendary U.S. punk band Bikini Kill would publish the second issue of their self-titled feminist zine with the subtitle Girl Power, which lead singer Kathleen Hanna said was inspired by the Black Power slogan. Sure enough, the phrase girl power would soon become an omnipresent idea and slogan of its own, encouraging and celebrating women's empowerment, independence, and strength, especially after the British girl group the Spice Girls made it their rallying cry in the mid-90s. But also in 1991, in the academic journal Critical Studies in Mass Communication, researchers Robert Goldman, Deborah Heath, and Sharon Smith would publish an essay entitled Commodity Feminism, in which they theorized that mass media often appropriates feminism for commercial purposes, tying images and ideas of strong, empowered women to certain brands, products, and pieces of entertainment in order to sell them to the public. Goldman, Heath, and Smith's articulation of commodity feminism, and its fear that ideas of female strength, confidence, and attitude would be misleadingly co-opted and tied to the importance of making the correct consumer choices, would quickly become a major concept utilized in feminist media studies, applied to critical analysis of female-driven franchises like Charlie's Angels, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and Sex and the City, as well as pop stars such as Beyoncé, Taylor Swift, and, yes, the Spice Girls. Meanwhile, 1991 also saw the release of the final entry in the initial trilogy of Ninja Gaiden video games, a series of games from the publisher Tecmo, concerning the adventures of Ninja Ryu Hayabusa, which had kicked off with 1988's release of Ninja Gaiden, and continued with 1990's release of Ninja Gaiden 2, The Dark Sword of Chaos. And while the 91 release of the trilogy culminating Ninja Gaiden 3, The Ancient Ship of Doom, might not at first seem to have much correlation with Bikini Kill's coining of the term girl power, or the publication of the commodity feminism essay, it did in fact set the stage for a later relaunch of the series that would merge it with the universe and continuity of another successful Tecmo video game franchise, a franchise that, even as it later less successfully tried to spin off into a movie franchise, would continue to be at the center of many a feminist theory-fueled debate about the potential negative effects, and even potentially insidious motivations, of girl power-focused stories that, nevertheless, might also be clearly aiming for the money and gaze of straight male consumers, and whether the particular version of girl power found in the franchise ultimately helps or hinders feminism. The year is 2006, and Constantin Film, Lionsgate, and the Weinstein Company are getting ready to release a cinematic adaptation of a popular but controversial fighting game series, and in the process hopefully launch the next big action movie franchise with DOA, Dead or Alive.
10, Welcome once again to Failure to Franchise, the show dedicated to some of Hollywood's most infamous mistakes, missteps, and misfires. This is Trev.
And I'm Chris, recently jacked up with nanobots and jiggle physics set to maximum.
Jacked up, I know that's the right term for this episode. So yeah. Yes, this is the continuation. Oh, actually, this is kind of special. This is the third episode in our Fighting VideoLAMES series, looking at failed adaptations of fighting video games. It's also the second installment in our mini-series within a series, If the Shoe Flops, a Robin Shoe Summer. I don't know if you noticed that, Chris.
Oh, my God. Yeah, I did notice. I swear to God, if he shows up in Tekken, I don't know what I'm going to do.
I know, yeah. No, so this is, as we said, we already looked at two movies based on the same video game, based on Street Fighter 2, with the Jean-Claude Van Damme, Raul Julia Street Fighter, and last time looked at Street Fighter, The Legend of Chun-Li, with Kristen Kruk, and an Academy Award-worthy performance from Chris Klein. But this time, we're finally moving on from the world of Street Fighter. Yes, they have made movies based on other fighting video games, and that is continuing today with 2006's DOA, Dead or Alive. But Chris, before you share the info that you usually give about the movie, giving us the the specifics of director and writer and all that, we knew that if we were going to cover, if two straight dudes with a podcast were going to cover DOA, Dead or Alive, we couldn't do this alone, right?
No, of course not. We looked to see who wanted to come back to the podcast, and very short list. many no's. But no, we did an episode 2 years ago, more than 2 years ago, which is wild because I thought it was last year. I think I stated on one of the podcasts recently.
Time is a harsh mistress. It is.
It's wild. The ultimate villain. But we covered Vampire Academy years ago, and we invited your friend, who has now become our friend, Jackie. And we thought DOA, Dead or Alive, a girl movie. We probably thought we need a girl in the mix of two losers like us. So, Jackie, hello and welcome back.
Hey there, woman reporting for duty.
Okay, that's it. That's it. She's gone. We have to.
Yeah, that's it. That's all we needed. Yeah, yeah. Good. We checked all the boxes. We're good.
Okay, no, seriously, Jackie, it's your time to shine. Please tell the listeners, why you agreed to this.
Well, I believe it was the conclusion of your last episode. You had, I think in jest, said that Trevor had a friend who was begging to be back on the podcast.
Yes.
That was not an exaggeration. I am an avid listener, second-time caller, because I just have been dying to get back on this podcast. There are so many movies that you are likely going to, I don't want to say break me away from this longing, this childhood, nostalgic fervor that I'll have in defending them. And there was one in particular, I was going to name it, but I don't know if I should name it if it's going to be a surprise later, but one that I really wanted to defend. And Trevor was like, oh, wait, you're a woman. we'll have you come in on the woman one.
Yeah.
Not the one.
I think I said the girl one. Just to be, but, yeah.
Jackie, 2 + 2 = 4. I don't know about if you knew that, but yeah.
It just, this.
Say more.
No,
that's it. No, I think that speaks for itself. I actually think that's it.
The stars aligned. Jackie had been asking to come back on. As she said, there's definitely other movies she'd been asking about. In fact, there are still a few movies that we will cover one day that when we get to those movies, I will be watching DVDs of them that Jackie lent me years ago, knowing that we would cover them someday.
Right.
And they've still just been sitting there waiting. But so maybe she'll join for some of those as well. But yeah, I just knew that when we had the idea to do this episode, it seemed like the perfect opportunity to to call in the fairer sex for assistance with this one. And I think if anyone is already familiar with the source material, they might know what we're getting at there, like why we might ask. But Jackie, can we just ask you? So without getting into thoughts on the movie yet or anything, because as you know, we save that for the review section. You are an avid listener, but why don't you just give us your thoughts when I gave you this idea for doing this movie and showed you the trailer? Did you understand the assignment? I should say.
The assignment which I chose to accept.
Yes.
I believe so, but honestly, I guess I sort of understood when the third woman popped up in the trailer what I would need to do, but
that was Robin Shue.
Before we get too far, is the bra scene, is that in the trailer?
Yeah. I believe so. It's
okay,
it's
that's
one of the trailers.
That's marketing 101.
That's the moment where I was like, okay.
Yeah.
As a bra wearer myself, I'm going to have to weigh in on the physics of this at some point. But no, I was curious about it because I love action movies and I love ladies. I'm an avid Buffy fan, as Trevor well knows. And he really, he and the Red Letter Media YouTube channel really turned me on to Cynthia Rothrock. Just in general, I've seen a couple of movies with Trev, a couple on my own that I just think are so fun. I get camp, I get schlock, but I didn't realize initially, honestly, which is embarrassing, that it was a video game movie. Watching the trailer at first,
yeah,
I kind of was trying to reconcile the graphics, and I know the references of it's like Charlie's Angels and things like that that were common in the early mid 2000s. But when I realized it was this is a part of the video game series, interesting, because I love video games, so. I have other, besides being a woman, I have other interests.
well, that's I'm Trev. The shock and awe from over there. Okay, yeah.
I've known her for years, and that's the first time I'm hearing of it. But okay,
it is not. But okay.
Well, I'm glad you said that you are an avid video game fan in some respect, because me and Trev have talked about our relationship with arcades and fighting games in general, especially back in the Street Fighter episode and the Chun-Li one. So listeners, go back to those episodes to check out if you haven't. But Jackie, I'm very curious your relationship to the arcade realm of video games, if and when, or at home, console based, by yourself, with friends, siblings. Like, I'm just so curious. Like, what is your relationship to, like, even the genre of fighting games in general?
Yeah, I've been to Dave and Buster's twice, but no, in terms of arcades, not much. I mean, there's really cool arcades in Michigan near me where I grew up, and I think people in Trevor's generation, that age bracket, I forget what they're called.
Neanderthals.
The one right after boomers. Oh, right, yes. So after
the ancient ones.
After the tools made of bones and the hunting and gathering, they played Tetris and Pong. But yeah, I never really was a big arcade person, but my cousin growing up had a Sega Genesis. And we really much, it was like nothing until the Game Boy. So my family was more Nintendo based. We had Game Boy Advanced. I had a DS. The only console I had PlayStation. Ooh, I'm tapping into memories I forgot. I had PlayStation. I think I had like, pause for laughter, Mary Kate and Ashley Olsen game.
Nice.
I forget if I played as them. I remember there was a roller skating component, was a really big part of that game. There might have been a shopping element too. I think there was a Yu-Gi-Oh game and a Spyro the Dragon.
Oh
that
yeah,
kind of
everybody had Spyro for sure.
But I never had Super Smash, for example. But growing up, like, we would go to Smash parties, and then Guitar Hero, that was a big thing. But with the Sega Genesis, that my cousin, like, we would go over to their house for holidays mostly, but it was kind of like we'd have to wait to get through dinner until it was time to break out the Sega Genesis. And he had Sergeant's Heroes, which I hate first-person shooters. I hate games like that, but this was fun because you were playing as toys. And the arena was like a child's bedroom, so it was kind of like a darker Toy Story, or there's other films that are similar to that. I'm blanking on the one name that I think Trevor made me watch.
Apocalypse
Small Soldiers?
Small Soldiers. Apocalypse Now! No. But the Capcom games, and again, I had no concept as a child of like a video game company, and I didn't realize that there were bigger machines sitting permanently in other places that were playing other games. I didn't even know what Street Fighter was, but he had Power Stone, and that game was awesome.
In the 19th century, people are strong believers of superstition and legend. Adventurers seek the world for fortune and glory and a legendary treasure which has the power to make dreams come true. That treasure is known as the Power Stone.
I loved Power Stone. It was so cool, and I didn't realize how dated the graphics were and how like limited it was until just now they released it on the Switch. Like, there's a Capcom Fighting Series 2, and it's a bunch of the games, and you can play the American versions, or you can play in Japanese. But I ignore everything in favor of Power Stone, which after playing Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, and even like honestly Animal Crossing, everything like looks better and just is more smooth, more lifelike, but still far from the uncanny valley. But just very interesting. But it's just like the way that you played, you're just like fighting each other. First person to get 3 stones gets to power up, and it's just killing the other person. 3 rounds, you're out. And every character was very generic. There was like, the Native American, the Arab lady, the stereotypical Japanese girl. I mean, there's no other way to phrase it. Like,
no, I get
and their
it,
settings were akin to that. But the problem was I had 2 sisters, and I'm also a girl. The game had only 2 female characters.
Right.
So the beautiful Arab girl, I believe her name was Jasmine, and Aimee, I think, was the Japanese girl, were taken by my sisters. And that left only a very bizarre physical arrangement of male characters for me to use. And my name is Jackie, and there was a character named Jack, and he was a corpse. I think he was like a mummy with swords, and that's who I played. So my sisters got to be the beautiful women, and I played the dead guy. And I came to love him. I came to appreciate him over time.
Yeah, well, to your sisters, Jackie's just built different now, so
Yeah, decomposing. But yeah, so it's
many person has said that Jackie gives off big mummy with swords energy. So.
yeah. I don't think I ever played that game.
I never even heard of that game.
Yeah,
that was a new one for me.
That was a new one. I know you had mentioned it in our chat last week, and I was like, "What is that game?" Usually I'm pretty aware, but that one was. That's fun. That's funny.
Have you guys ever played a video game and not had a character selection that you felt you could relate to or that represented you as a person?
To be honest, maybe this is just a quintessential man thing that I guess you don't really think about it. And then also, I do think usually as a guy, you do pick the girl, which is funny. There's like a cultural thing that men will pick a female avatar in a game.
It's funny because Jackie, you mentioned how that game only had 2 female characters, and I was sitting here thinking, well, like in terms of like some of the video games we've been talking about as we've been doing this series already, that's actually kind of progressive to have 2 female characters because you think of like Mortal Kombat. At least the original versions of Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter 2 both only had 1 female character, Sonya Blade in Mortal Kombat and Chun-Li in Mortal Kombat or in Street Fighter 2. But Chris is right; those were 2 of the most popular characters, and I think most of the men playing the game had no problem picking them. They were just, but I hear what you're saying. It's obviously been a long discussion in the video game world. I mean, I would just say if you're asking, were there ever characters who don't represent me? I mean, when I play any of these fighting games, there might be like white males in there, but they're all also super jacked and no martial arts, so I don't feel entirely represented by them. There's no Ryu versus the nerdy English teacher. So, but obviously that's far less of a problem than the lack of female representation in a lot of these.
The countdown to the match just starts and it goes fight, and then you just fall over because your knees. It's just dumb. yeah.
Oh yeah, Trevor will play old man. Chris is Italian Canadian. What would your setting be, Chris?
Chris has the Mario games. He has tons of representation.
Yeah, that's done. Yeah.
So it's just a bunch of pipes and mushrooms. I wonder what my arena would be if I were to, because I did kickboxing. So
and you're a journalist. I don't know. Would it be a newsroom?
Yeah.
You'd be in a newsroom, right? And paper would be flying and old school newsroom,
Hudsucker proxy.
Yeah.
Well, I think your badass representation in media would come from Lois Lane, obviously, who is one of the best
there you go.
women characters around.
Catherine
But
Hepburn.
in terms, that is an interesting question to ask, though. I mean, you're kind of alluding to it, but even beyond, what's the game, Power Stone,
Power Stone,
or just in
correct.
Yeah, before this
It's a Power Stone podcast now.
Before it became such a big discussion, which I think was a good thing when that happened in the video game world, unfortunately led to bull crap like Gamergate and everything. But when you were younger playing all these video games, did you kind of consciously really feel that lack of representation in the games? Was it something you were thinking about and very aware of?
So the thing is, I'm going to misquote somebody, but there's an author that discussed this a lot. I want to say it was Ursula Le Guin, but it was the idea that, especially in literature or narrative-based storytelling, all the time, women and minorities are asked to put themselves in the mindset or in the perspective of someone who's not like them, and it's typically a white heterosexual, or at least pretending to be heterosexual male. And in the video game world, I never really cared who my character was, but because I don't like first person, especially, there's just something about me holding the gun myself and feeling that jerky movements I don't love, and I'm not that great at, but there's something just seeing my character navigate the world and having that orientation as I move through a story, which is sort of time-based. I like open worlds because you're building the story as you go, but there's still threads and paths you can follow. But I'm not thinking, oh, is this me or isn't me? Because my agency, my ability to control that environment through the character is all I really need. But I believe with Breath of the Wild and the latest Zelda games, they kind of made Link a twink on purpose. that they sort of feminized him and tried to make him seem more androgynous so as to not isolate anybody and make him more of a cipher as a playable character. But my thoughts are like, yes, I would sometimes go for a female character, you know, for a very different reason, I assume, than a man would choose to be a female character. But I just gravitate towards it. When I would play, what's the one where you're fighting through layers of hell, and
Diablo?
A lot of people playing. Yes, Diablo 3. I would make my character was like the largest, beefiest lady possible. I forget her. She's not. I'm trying to mix her with my like Dungeons of Dragons references, where I wanted her to be like a half orc or something. I forget what the character types are in Diablo, but I made her this like really beefy, tough lady, and I would like every time I would play that game, I would name her after a different female protagonist from literature that I loved, because I sort of was like playing her through this scenario of events through the perspective of this character that I was also conjuring. My God, I sound really cool. I went outside and as a child very infrequently. That's why my skin is so nice, because I never saw the sun or touched grass. I was too busy playing pretend while playing video games. But yeah, that's my experience. I'd rather be the woman. I don't have to be. I'm very used to not having that option when I play games.
Right.
But when given my druthers, when given the option, I'll choose it.
First of all, again, there's nothing wrong with playing a lot of video games even when you're younger and or now, because like I'll even speak just from my anecdotal personal experience with my fiance. She is an avid gamer, and she has been her whole life. And it's funny that it's interesting to hear your perspective of picking like jacked chicks, you know, like trying to almost like beefy, almost making a female character more masculine in that sense. And then when I see Brittany play her games and there's an avatar creator or some sort of character customization, she's always picking like the absolute most dainty, princessy, like totally like the total opposite of the spectrum, but still a female character. And I find that just so interesting, that both sides of the spectrum are picking female characters, but then also manipulating them to the opposite ends of that spectrum as well. You know what I mean? Like I guess that's the beauty of the character creator, right? Like you get to literally put some sort of fantastical element of yourself in the game. And, It's just, I don't know. It's just more of a comment than even a question. I think I'm just kind of bringing it up.
Doesn't it also? It feels like those are kind of the only two options available, though. Also, right? Like the very, very masculine, like women, and then the very, very dainty women. And it's like kind of that's not that we're trying to be too like academic in this episode or anything. And obviously, we were being kind of like cheeky with the joke about bringing on Jackie for this, as the token woman for DOA discussion. But I think this is a good discussion to have, because we were very much speaking about a video game franchise, and obviously movie adaptation that kind of speaks to this larger question about the video game world, where kind of like when they tried to respond to this criticism or to this legitimate concern, like how do they respond, right? And it's this like this fine line between, is this genuine female empowerment, or is this just still, it's called female empowerment, but really it's just masquerading. That's just masquerading as that, but really it's still just like male gaze TNA. And like I can't think of a better video game franchise to examine that with than DOA.
Yeah.
I can't speak to your fiance's psychological approach to the character conception, nor can I delve into my own without a few more degrees. But there is something about like femininity and womanhood as being a spectrum. And we can get into this a little bit later, but from my perspective, as a woman in the world, as you move through life, there's a lot of ideas projected onto you of what womanhood is or can be or should be, and you sort of have to contend with that while you're still making that sense of self, while you're still sort of learning what womanhood means to you. And I have a lot of trans friends. I have a lot of really intense, I I don't want to say like studies of gender roles, but people who sort of look at these roles in very different ways and how they apply their personalities to those roles. But from my perspective, like I'm 5'4" and I did gymnastics, and my sister was a weightlifter. So I understood from very young that all body types and all different sizes can do pretty phenomenal things. And I have seen very tiny, tiny ladies do feats of strength relative to their own body weight that are absolutely stunning and worldwide record breaking. And I've seen people who look really tough sort of fall flat on their face.
Right.
So, but at the same time, like I'm 5'4", and I've obviously always desperately wanted to be taller. And as Trev has known me for 10 years now, if not longer, I don't remember how long we've known each other, at least 10 years, I wear high heels a lot. And they're not like high heel, like kitten heels or whatever. They're really in like tough combat boots, but they're usually like a really thick, durable rubber sole heel because it makes me taller and it makes me feel more in command. And it makes an audible sound when I move, which is kind of like, here she comes. And just by taking up that space and making that sound as I move through life, that is in a way me doing character customization. Wow, I am getting way too deep. I'm overthinking this. But like that's part of like the armor that you wear in life. And like as I perform womanhood every day, I think about how I do that in like the fantasy of self, in the fantasy of people are going to look at me and think a certain kind of way about me based on how I dress. I'm going to dress like the badass chick who could kick butt in a fake pretend newsroom, even though I'm going into a real newsroom every week. And that's part of the outfitting of self that we do for ourselves while in public. So when you're in private, in a fake world, you know, the possibilities that you choose, I'm sure they say things about you that someone like a licensed therapist could do a better job at breaking this down for us. But from my perspective, it is interesting to see those changes when you give women options, what they would choose, kind of thing.
Totally. No, I think all that is excellent and insightful. I enjoy. I do. No, I honestly, that's great.
The woman speaks.
Yeah. You're bringing a level of class to this this podcast. Yeah. So no, that's
Trevor's literally
great.
a professor. What are you talking about?
Well, and he also does arrive in those same boots. So yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Here he comes, Miss America.
Well, his wife is very tall, so he's got to keep up.
There you go. Okay.
Liz, I love you.
Let's just jump into DOA, the video game, as it speaks. There's a little bit of history to like the actual game, and I do want to ask you both, and I'll give in my perspective as well about like our anecdotes with even this property. There's not a ton of BTS for the movie proper, so I think we'll give a little bit of backstory to the game, why it came to being, our first interactions with it, and then Trev, I know you want to talk about the director of the movie, which I still even haven't said. Wow. Wow, what an intro. 25 minutes. Okay, real quick.
It's called table setting. That's fine.
This DOA, Dead or Alive, from 2006, is directed by Corey Yuen. He is a famed Hong Kong director, producer, actor, stunt choreographer. He was Bruce Lee's stunt double. He gained American fame with directing The Transporter. He directed 6 of Jet Li's English works, which is funny because that kind of connects to the Street Fighter Chun-Li episode, because the director and Corey Yuen worked together on Romeo Must Die and Cradle to the Grave and even Lethal Weapon 4. So I thought that was a nice little connective tissue of like this video game, little cinematic universe that was happening. It is written by J.F. Lawton. He wrote Pretty Woman. Speaking of femininity and maybe, well, we'll get to that. We'll get to that because he also made Under Siege. And then he created the Pamela Anderson VIP series. Do you guys remember that show?
I do, yeah.
I
but
do
I'm
too.
not from. I never watched it. I just remember when it was a thing and like seeing all the promos for it.
I
But,
think I stared at it. You know what I mean? It's
yeah,
like,
I mean, I think that's what it was made to do. It
Yeah.
wasn't. It wasn't made to watch. It was made to stare at.
Yeah.
We should also put a really important asterisk on the Pretty Woman aspect, because I don't know if either of you know like the history of Pretty Woman, but like when you say that he wrote Pretty Woman, it's important to note he wrote the original script that was sold to Disney.
Okay.
Which, if you don't know this, that was a script called 3000. And it was a very, very darker version of Pretty Woman that actually ends with like him like just like deciding to leave her because he's like, no, this was just a fling, and the movie ends with her getting kicked out of the limo and her just taking the money with a friend and going off to like Disneyland or something at the end. But it was like a very, very dark version, and Jeffrey Katzenberg was like, well, we like the idea of a guy hiring a sex worker, but let's make this a light Disney movie. Maybe he did the rewrites, but he definitely is the guy that originally had like the darker, like more dramatic version in mind.
It's also written by Adam and Seth Gross. They worked on the Bill Nye the Science Guy show. So, an incredible recipe we have here for this movie. The budget was upwards of $30 million domestically. This is I don't know if it's the lowest ever, but it's close. Domestically, it made $480,000. And then worldwide, it made $7.5 million. So DOA was literally dead on arrival. I know that's a pun, but I had to say it. It was right there. It's got to be.
I was kind of mystified to see it had any domestic gross at all, because my memory really was of this being like just straight DTV here in like the the North America. So I wondered that must have just been one of those like token theatrical releases over like one weekend or something before they stuck it on video shelves. Yeah,
100%. Let's talk a little bit about the game. Real quick, did you guys play this game? Like, it came out in 96, and it's still ongoing. The most recent release was actually March of 2025, literally in our right before our theme month here, and it was just a spin-off. I think it might even be a free-to-play. I'm not sure, but in general, it's been ongoing from 96 till the present day. Jackie, DOA. Lots of female characters in this game. Did it, ring a bell ever?
So this game came out in 1996?
Yes.
I came out in 1994. So no, did not hear of this game or play it. What would it have been on anything, or would it have just been an arcade game?
Arcade.
No, this was home consoles
yeah, like
too.
It was consoles like PlayStation, and I guess not to cut you off, but do you have? This is where I think even the beginnings of the movie started. But in 2003, there was a spin-off, the first spin-off series for this game, and it was the Xtreme Beach Volleyball. Does that ring a bell at all for you?
It doesn't, but at the same time, my parents weren't buying me a lot of video games. I would either rent them from the library or, I guess, borrow them from the library. I guess you don't rent. But it would have been mature, right? Like,
yeah,
the
it would have
volleyball
been,
scene in particular. So, did not ring a bell, and I went to a Catholic school, elementary and middle school. So I doubt any of my friends at the time would have even heard of this.
Okay. Well, that's basically like I bring that up because that is my intro to this series. It took a few to get to me. Dead or Alive 2 or 3 was are seminal fighting games in the history of the genre. But when they released the Xtreme Beach Volleyball, it was kind of a cultural phenomenon for the gaming world at the time. For that male gaze of it all. This is actually, I talked to Brittany, my fiance, and she said the only DOA she played was that one, which is funny. Because it was like this huge thing, pun unintended, because every character is very buxom and in their scantily clad bikinis, and it incorporated they coined it jiggle physics. That's DOA.
Okay, I was going to say, I have the word in my notes because it came up. I forget if it was a comment or in a review. I purposefully did not look up this phrase because I wanted the two of you to explain it to me.
Yes. If you go to YouTube and type in Dead or Alive Xtreme Beach Volleyball and then jiggle physics, or Or even just
What will
look
I
at
find if I do that, Chris?
you'll see the gameplay just happening, but things are moving in a physically illogical way. Everything is bouncing, everything is jiggling, and it is purely meant to tantalize the teenage brain.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of graphics, how did they accomplish the jiggle physics? What was the science?
That's their trademark secret. We don't have the
Yes.
patent over here. We can't.
It was one of their biggest selling games because of this thing, and it created this whole controversy and everything. Because I believe you could even turn it up and turn it down. I think it was an actual customizable mechanic in the game. I could be wrong, but that's what my memory's telling me. But
yeah, because you were asking, both of us our memory of this game, and it's, we've talked before about how I was really into fighting games at that that peak period of when Street Fighter 2 and Mortal Kombat hit, and then we talked about some of the other games we were playing at the same time, like Virtua Fighter and Clay Fighter. We're gonna bring it up again because it rules. But my DOA was never my series or my game, and it's kind of one of those series that I feel like I always have to be reminded that it is even a very popular franchise, and I think it's the kind of one where I think if you're a hardcore gamer, you're very aware of it probably, but I don't think it's one that ever crossed over to the same mainstream recognition as some of the other bigger, fighting games we talked about.
Especially in the States. It's
especially
huge
in the
in
States.
Japan. Yeah.
And, well, of course, those pervs. Yeah. No, I'm just kidding. But, we love Japan. But my memory of DOA always was that it was kind of a punchline in the media, right? For exactly the reasons you're talking about. Especially by the time the volleyball game hit, you were right that game was definitely, I remember that game being kind of very, very popular and a phenomenon in terms of, coverage in video game media, but it was always seemed to be the journalists were making fun of it and making fun of the people who would want to play it, just for its sheer existence and the fact that look at this, this is just why aren't these people just watching real porn or something instead of playing this game? That was kind of the way it seemed always treated to me, and it's kind of the way I always approached it. Was it's interesting because for the purposes of research for this episode, I'm sure maybe you guys did this too. I went and watched some YouTube videos about the mythology of the video game series and the series storyline, and it's actually much more of just a kind of standard generic fighting video game than I would have thought, with actually a long running story and kind of a complex one. But certainly to me, the only thing I knew about it was it's the game where most of the fighters are hot women, and you're ogling them, and they're in bikinis or very skimpy outfits, and they jiggle all around. That's just all I kind of knew about it.
Yeah.
I mean, I was very surprised and kind of fascinated to learn that as the series went on, it actually ended up being in the same universe and continuity with Ninja Gaiden, which is a video game I am familiar with. That was I remember playing the original one back on Nintendo back in the day, and I even had when I was a kid, I had a novelization of that first game that I read. I quite liked that series, and I didn't know that that's connected to DOA. So so like I said, I just always thought of DOA as oh, that's the booby game, right? Because that's all it was kind of treated as in certain circles.
Yeah,
Can you guys explain to me what is a narrative in a fighting game like this? Because aren't you just fighting and then the winner moves on to the next round? How do you have a plot?
You'd be surprised.
As
just
with a lot of Japanese creative, the plots and narratives are extremely complicated. But bare bones of Dead or Alive, basically, it's similar to the movie, which we'll get to, that fighters across the globe are brought in to participate in the Dead or Alive World Combat Championship. But they are also trying to take down the whole organization as well. It's run by the Dead or Alive Tournament Executive Committee, and it's a lot of intricate plot lines and narrative conflict between obviously the fighters, but then an internal struggle to take down the organization. But
so it's basically the idea is as someone who watched a kind of admittedly boring 14-minute video going through the story of each game, it is very much the DOA Tech Corporation, they're the fighting tournament is kind of just their public face, right? They put it out there and say we're having this tournament, but really they're kind of a standard narrative evil corporation who's trying to go for world domination at the same time, and usually using elements of the tournament in some way to create soldiers that they can sell to world governments or whatever. And the primary storyline that goes through all the games is there's this clan of ninjas. Some of those characters we will talk about as represented in the movie. And this clan of ninjas, it gets involved in this like years-long battle trying to take down DOA Tech. And even in which I didn't realize because it just, again, not saying anything about our thoughts of the movie, but you wouldn't know it from this movie. In the second game, it heads into supernatural territory where the tournament actually unleashes this ancient demon, and so now there's like more supernatural elements. It gets very, very complex as it goes along.
Yeah, but like Trev said, the narrative goes wonky.
It goes
everywhere.
And Jackie, if you're just asking about the sheer specifics of how a narrative works in a fighting video game, I think this is what's interesting about fighting games is I don't know that I have these. I'm just making these numbers up off the top of my head. But fighting games are designed in a way where you can just play them and just do the fights, right? And that's what I think. I probably like 70% of people play fighting games probably approach it that way, where they're like, I'm just here to button mash and to do the fights and keep winning the fights and have fun. But then there's probably the other 30% who do get into the storyline. And this is probably more for home play even. I think it's kind of tough to get the storyline to come across in the arcade because you'd have to sit there for a long time and pump quarters in. But there's an idea that after 4 or 5 fights or something, there'll be another cutscene that kind of advances the storyline. And ultimately, you are progressing through the tournament or through the fighting scheme in a way where eventually you're fighting a final boss that represents the narrative in some degree. And depending on how that final fight plays out, you'll be shown a different version of like the filmed or animated ending they've created.
Yeah. Racing games do something similar too.
I'm not really big into racing games. I'm not that good of a driver.
Right. Well, you did spend a lot of time in New York, so I guess there's not a lot of driving you do, right?
No, I'm just mostly walking there.
And she's a woman. That's what she's looking for. She's a woman.
Oh,
so
there we go.
Wow. Yep. Wow. I also, by the way, I want to go back to that Ninja Gaiden thing. That was cool too. I didn't know that. I played a little bit of Ninja Gaiden in my day. Very difficult game. That was kind of the thing before this. Souls-like is the term in more recent years, being just like dreadfully difficult in every respect. But Ninja Gaiden was very hard, and the protagonist Ryu, funnily enough, the same name as the character in Street Fighter, is in almost every DOA game, and then is the protagonist for Ninja Gaiden, and then also is a character in this movie. So, interesting that you kind of get a little bit of a Ninja Gaiden crossover event happening in the movie theater, and people didn't even know it, because, well, $480,000 worth of people saw it.
Well, and I'll just say this now so I don't forget, because it's kind of an interesting little addendum to that, is that, so you said Ryu Hayabusa, who is that character who's, is a featured character in all the DOA games and now is the protagonist in Ninja Gaiden as well. In this movie, played by Kane Kosugi, who is actually the son of Sho Kosugi, who is the star of multiple ninja movies in the 80s when that huge ninja movie boom was going on. So, Sho Kosugi was in films like Enter the Ninja and Revenge of the Ninja, Ninja 3, The Domination, Pray for Death. He was actually the big ninja movie star in American films, and Canon were pumping these out in the 80s. And so it's kind of cool that his son goes on to play Ryu Hayabusa in this, who is, as you just said, the star of the most popular ninja video game franchise.
Yeah,
so that was kind of cool. Yeah,
that's actually a perfect segue for you to talk about your love, and Jackie, talk about the love of your martial arts films in general, but especially the late great Corey Yuen. So I know, Trev, you mentioned in our group thread that you needed 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah, I'll try to keep it to that. Yeah, because it's interesting. When I think both of us get excited if we approach a movie that has an actual kind of pedigree to it, or at least a pedigree as we see it. And it is really important for me to mention that this movie is directed by Corey Yuen. Now, Chris already mentioned some of his credits up top, but I just want to say yes, the late great Corey Yuen is without a doubt one of, to me, the legends of Hong Kong martial arts cinema. So just give a quick little, I'll try to keep this very, very brief, by my standards, but he was, when he was 9 years old, his parents couldn't afford to raise him. So he's one of the children who were sold to basically he was sold to they signed a 10-year contract to sell him to the China Drama Academy, which was an opera school in Peking. And there you were put through this like really tough regiment. You lived there, you were raised there, and you were put through this really tough regiment of being taught to be an actor and an acrobat in addition to your studies. And he actually became part of this group, which maybe you have heard of, called the Seven Little Fortunes. The Seven Little Fortunes would be this little like acting troupe of little small children who are actors and acrobats who do these shows. And the Seven Little Fortunes, they're called that because there'd only ever be 7 on stage at one time, but there's actually more than 7. But in the class he was part of has gone on to be this like really, really famous, in pop culture and in cinematic history group. His version of the Seven Little Fortunes had him. It also included Jackie Chan, Sammo Hung, Yuen Biao, and then those would be the ones that people like really know, like that trio, and then Corey Yuen is the director of among them, and then also Yun Wao and Yun Q, who you might know as the landlord and landlady in Kung Fu Hustle. So kind of like everybody in that group of the Seven Little Fortunes went on to like martial arts movie fame, including Corey Yuen, who, like his classmates, goes on to be a stunt performer and actor in numerous martial arts movies through the 80s. Just some of the titles I quickly jotted down were Chinese Hercules, the Shadow Boxer, The Invincible Armor. So he's making all these like, kung fu movies. He's never quite the star. He's usually like a supporting character in them, or just like someone who gets beat up by the main star. But he's in a lot of them. But what really matters to people like me is in the 90s he moves over into fight choreography and directing. In the 80s, I should say, he moves over to that. And he kind of goes through these different runs where he gets attached to like certain stars. So, he makes, as Jackie mentioned, he works with Cynthia Rothrock multiple times in making Yes, Madam, Righting Wrongs. He goes on to work with Jean-Claude Van Damme in No Retreat, No Surrender. And then he makes the sequel with Cynthia Rothrock. He makes this really great movie called She Shoots Straight that I highly recommend if you're into like the kind of like, they're called the girls with guns. That's the subgenre. So it was really big in the martial arts movies of the 80s and 90s in Hong Kong. Just the tough women. And She Shoots Straight is one that stars Joyce Godenzi, who is Sammo Hung's wife. It's kind of Sammo Hung produced it and made it as like this little like gift to her essentially. But yeah, he's directing all his films, and he kind of becomes known as one of the best, like, up-and-coming, most exciting martial arts directors and, fight choreographers. What he kind of, like, focuses on, and it's not that this is brand new, he just finds a really, really kind of dynamic way to film it, is fast cuts and hard impact. Like, really taking advantage of his stunt teams, but also cutting the fights in a way where the impact seems even tougher, and it can also kind of, like, sometimes... this kind of comes more when he gets to America. He knows a way to cut to kind of hide the limitations of his performers. But then when he's given performers who really are skilled at martial arts in general, he still finds a way to just make their fights look even faster and more brutal and just so dynamic. And yeah, some of those movies...
that the scene that you sent me and Jackie, I've seen that scene before, by the way.
Yeah.
And I what is that scene again? What is it from? Because it was awesome,
so, yeah,
obviously. And I wanted to like kind of pinpoint that.
Yeah, that scene is from maybe my favorite Corey Yuen movie, and that is Yes, Madam, starring Michelle Yeoh and Cynthia Rothrock. And what he's talking about is the final battle in that, which is just this like Cynthia Rothrock and Michelle Yeoh taking on this entire army of men essentially in this this glass-filled atrium, tons of glass to be shattered, tons of walls to scale, tons of chandeliers to hang from, just a glorious masterpiece of 10 minutes of just very, very brutal fighting and crazy stunts. There's a stunt in there that every time I see it, when that guy gets thrown off the balcony and hits the 2 kind of platforms going down before just slamming into the ground. These Hong, as we all know from the Jackie Chan movies of the time, the Hong Kong stunt performers were insane. They were all nuts. Definitely. And he definitely took advantage of that. Yeah, if I would just highlight people who want to check out his best Hong Kong stuff, Yes, Madam, for sure. Another favorite of mine is Righting Wrongs, which stars Yuen Biao and Cynthia Rothrock. Very, very good one. And then he also directed Dragons Forever, which is probably the best team-up movie of Jackie Chan, Yuen Biao, and Sammo Hung. The 3 of those guys made a bunch of movies together, his classmates from the Seven Little Fortunes, but that's maybe the best one with the 3 of them, and he directed that as well. He also directs some movies with Andy Lau and Stephen Chow, so he kind of works with a lot of the big talent of the time. But then, significantly, he gets paired up with Jet Li. And he works with Jet Li on the Fong Se-yuk movies in the 90s. And then Jet Li loves him. So they do a bunch of movies together. He directs a bunch of Jet Li movies. So much so, and this is what you were alluding to earlier, Chris, when you mentioned his filmography. Jet Li, when he gets called to America, he brings Corey Yuen with him.
Yeah.
And he says, look, I'll make all these American movies. I don't care who's directing them. The only person I want designing my fight scenes is Corey Yuen. So in all his movies like The One and Romeo Must Die and Kiss the Dragon, they might not be directed by Corey Yuen, but he's directing the fight scenes. And so and then he also, because he's doing so well knows, he gets recruited into other American films. He's the fight choreographer and action designer for X-Men. And in fact, during that time, he's the one who hires Ki-Hei Kwan to work as a fight choreographer and stunt performer for him. So that's where, as we know, he was working just in fighting at that time. And then he ultimately ends up also getting set up because he's works with Jet Li a lot. But I'd say his other significant collaboration in America is Jason Statham when he directs The Transporter. Now, some people will say, well, no, I thought Louis Leterrier directed The Transporter. This is another kind of confusing thing where in some markets they had to credit Louis Leterrier, and they just put Corey Yuen is just special thanks or something. But again, Corey Yuen basically designed all the action in that movie, and Leterrier was just left to do the great dialogue scenes from The Transporter. But yeah, and then he goes on again to work with Jason Statham in Transporter 2 and the Expendables films, working on the stunt the stunt and fighting choreography. So yeah, just one of the greats. And we just said he's the late great. Unfortunately, he did pass away in 2022 from COVID-19. Interestingly enough, the world did not find that out until last year, 2024. His family kept it a secret. And it only became public knowledge when Jackie Chan mentioned it on an Instagram post or something, and suddenly the world learned he had passed away 2 years earlier. But wow. It was a definite loss. Definitely, if you're, I mentioned some of the titles I really like, but basically, if you're watching a Corey Yuen movie that he's directed, there's going to be at least one fight scene in there that you're going to love, and there's going to be maybe, especially the Hong Kong ones, there's going to be some stunts that are going to blow your mind.
Jackie, do you are you familiar with the more Chinese filmography of his?
So I outsource most of my opinions on martial arts films to Trev. I know most about it because he's so interested, and that interest is infectious. And whenever we're choosing what movie to watch, I'm getting more into it because I do think it is fascinating. And, that's part of why Tom Cruise is so, he's really holding on to the dying ember of movie stardom by just what will this man actually put his body through. But, totally. In China, they were really doing that in ways that in the U.S. we can't really appreciate anymore. And there's a few people who could do what he did. But I just wanted to bring the attention to the other thing that Trev sent us, which was the behind the scenes with the actresses. And that's something that Trevor's talked to me about before, especially with another late great, David Lynch. We'd be texting about Lynch or whatever, and he'd say I remember the first time he sent me this video, he's like, do you ever see that video of how his actresses talk about him? They're in love with him. Oh my God. And so he sent me that YouTube clip, and they're just so horny for David Lynch. And it's because it's that thing of you really learn how a person is by how they treat their subordinates. But there was just in that behind the scenes clip with the Corey Yuen and the actresses, just there's this reverence and just real respect for the craft and his kindness and warmth, but also just directness and just he knows what he's doing. He treats everyone extremely well. And he makes the movie he sets out to make, which everyone's a part of, and they get it from the beginning. And even just the artistry of the storyboarding and how you storyboard a fight scene as someone who can actually do it himself. That's fantastic to me. And
he is the heart and soul of this project. He works tirelessly. He's a very gentle person. He's very caring. He's totally cares about the well-being of each and every one of us.
I've never had a problem understanding him. He works off of pictures, and you know exactly what he wants from everything.
Corey has storyboards drawn out to the T, and they're beautiful storyboards that honestly look like a comic book. They're paintings. They're gorgeous. And every shot is done exactly as drawn so that you know what you're going to be doing. And he has it edited in his head already. He is a master at what he does, and we're all very lucky to be working with him, that's for sure.
Trevor would know more about that than I would, but
Yeah,
It was Chris that sent that video, but I'll take credit for it.
sorry.
I was
Chris.
see, I wasn't gonna correct you because you're the guest and that's okay. But
We have to give Trevor even more credit.
I
here,
know,
so.
right? I know. I'm so glad you brought that up though, because not only because I can place clips in the podcast now, but it is infectious to hear those women talk about Corey Yuen, especially since this is actually an issue with the making of the movie is the language barrier. It's, on set people spoke English, Cantonese, Mandarin, and just like regional dialects. And you'll hear that like Jamie Presley was like, I always knew what Corey Yuen was telling me. It was in his eyes. I can see it in his energy. I knew what I needed to do. Of course, we're going to talk about DOA proper, but I don't know how much heavy lifting emotionally there is in this movie. However, when it comes to like the stunts and everything, you can tell that these either first time stunt performers or just the crew in general, or just he made everybody very comfortable, and he knew what he wanted, and it was expertly shown to the people involved. So like there was really no confusion, even though there was an incredible language barrier making this movie. So I'm so glad you brought that up. That was great.
He's choreographed scenes in X-Men and Lethal Weapon 4, No Retreat, No Surrender, The One, Hero, many notable films. So as a martial artist, I feel very privileged to be working with him.
And that's something I would add about him too, is that, and again, I'm always hesitant to ever say this, because I feel like every time we say like, yeah, I never heard a bad thing about him, then someone tells me, you didn't hear about the awful scandal or whatever. But it really seems to me like whenever because as not surprisingly, I have the special edition, Blu-rays of a lot of his movies, like the Hong Kong ones in particular. And you listen to the film critics talk about him on the commentaries, and then the actors interviewed in the making ofs. And, for these productions, which obviously were very, very tough, especially, the Hong Kong films, which were rushed and made very cheap and put together often like kind of on the fly, so it's like a stressful environment, but it just seemed like everyone like loved working with him.
Yeah.
And he really does seem like he's kind of like one of those just like mensches that was actually like, as stressful as it might have been to kind of create these like epic fight scenes, he was trying to make it fun. And I know Jamie Presley was on record as saying the reason she did this movie is because Corey Yuen was the director. So if you have like even just kind of a passing interest in action cinema, you are probably going to jump at the chance to be in one of his movies because you just kind of wanted to experience that kind of action design and choreography like for yourself.
Let's get into this movie. I think that's a perfect way to talk about Corey Yuen before we talk about this movie. And, let's kind of leave it there, and we'll all get back together on the other side of this trailer.
Dead or alive? Welcome to you all.
Each of you has been individually selected because you represent the best fighting style in your specialized field. Soon, you will get a chance to prove that you are the best fighter in the world.
Hey, this thing kind of reminds me of a disco.
And at the same time, pick up a $10 million prize.
In a vault on the island.
I want her.
Of course.
You're just worried this phony is making the moves in your dream, girl.
Dad, I already told you, I am done wrestling. I'm done being fake. I'm done.
Fights can happen anytime, any place, against anyone. I select matchups based on computer analysis of the most competitive scenarios.
I wish I could go with you.
No.
My only goal is to find out what happened to my brother. If we're going to make it, we need to work together.
Nina, it's showtime.
Dad, not now. I'm in my underwear.
Oh my God.
No, Dad, she's just another fighter.
Yeah, I can see that.
No. I mean, what?
We'll settle up tomorrow, sweetie.
DOA style. Bring it on. Get out of here! Get him low!
DOA is an invite-only martial arts tournament where the world's best fighters compete on a mysterious island. 3 female fighters are chosen to take part in DOA. Christy Allen, a sexy jewel thief, Tina Armstrong, a tough-as-nails pro wrestler, and Kasumi, a ninja princess in search of her missing brother. Once arriving on the island after jumping out of their airplane with parachutes, Christy, Tina, and Kasumi find they aren't just fighting for the championship, but are also entangled in Master Donovan's evil plan for high-priced augmented reality martial arts Oakley sales? DOA.
Yes, and what an evil plan it is. We will get into that. A very good, very succinct simplification of a fairly crazy plot, but also one that I think is a simplification of what the video game series is going for. I mean, we can talk about that as well. But Jackie, this is you are our token woman, as you thankfully were willing to agree to be. So we're going to let you go first on this. As someone who approached, as we said, you didn't even know this is a video game series. You had no attachment to the IP. You were just coming to this, I don't know, were you looking for tough female representation? Or were you just looking for a good time? And what did you think of the movie overall? What was your DOA, Dead or Alive experience?
Like you said, I didn't know this movie existed until about 2 weeks ago. Last week, I started the movie. I paused it halfway to wait for my boyfriend to come home so that we could restart it together. And then I spent the rest of the night reading a lot of comments online. And a lot of those comments said that DOA was shallow, bloodless, sexist, and stupid without a single ounce of self-awareness. And I completely fucking disagreed. This movie kicks ass. I loved it. I love this movie. I had a great fucking time from start to finish. Maybe that makes me a bad feminist, but honestly, I don't think this movie is asking me to be a bad feminist. We oogle it, ladies, but in between that, we get real characters that drive the plot, and they are the women. They're the focus, they're the point, and they're the ones who get the story. And the time it took to make this in a real place, where even if there's wires or CGI elements, I could tell that there was physical bodies moving around a real space most of the time, which compared to a lot of the Marvel slop I've gotten used to lately, this just felt cheesy and fun while still taking enough time to sort of highlight subtle facial expressions and quiet moments with these characters. And I don't know, it felt fun and fresh, and yes, there's a lot of other elements, but for what it was in its time, to me, I was like, wow, this was not a bad time. I enjoyed myself, and I actually laughed a few times. So yeah, I loved it. I had a great time.
Chris?
Okay, so off the bat, Jackie, have you seen Charlie's Angels Full Throttle?
I don't remember all of the Charlie's Angels movies. I've seen a couple of them. I remember seeing them as a kid. I don't remember anything about them except Lucy Liu, Drew Barrymore, and Cameron Diaz are super hot. But I did see the new Kristen Stewart Charlie's Angels movie.
So did we.
And
Did you watch that for our podcast?
I watched that with my friend Haley, who I believe you know.
I do.
We saw it in theaters, and it was fine. I like Kristen Stewart. I couldn't tell you anything else that happened.
No,
right. Okay.
I don't know the names of the characters. I don't know the plot. But
I found this review that was on Letterboxd for Charlie's Angels Full Throttle. So I'm going to read it to you first, okay? It is from September 8th, 2020. I'm fairly certain my junior high brain wrote this movie. It's clear that this was a total blast for everyone to make, and I love an over-the-top action comedy that knows exactly what it is. Is it bad? Sure. But it's so silly and dumb that it circles back to being fun as hell, and I can't trust you if you think otherwise. I wrote that review.
Plot twist.
Yeah, I wrote that review. Me and Trev and some other buddies during the pandemic, we would do quarantine movie nights, and that was part of it. And we realized how much we love that movie, and I gave it 3.5 out of 4, and I just had a total blast. And Jackie, I gotta agree with everything you're saying. I thought DOA, it might be a low bar, but it's absolutely the best movie we watched out of these 3 movies for this theme. This is a movie that knows precisely what it is. It is so obviously not taking itself seriously, but there's still care involved in it. Like the Corey Yuen of it all, like I think the choreography is actually quite well done. He's doing a pretty good job of coming into the American way of editing. Like it's still not the best, but there's a couple scenes in particular that I think are pretty fantastic. One involving a staircase with like 40 people that who's Helena, the character Helena is fighting with a bunch of swords, which is like pure, Chinese martial arts, just kind of vibes in that. And also a scene with Helena and Christy on a beach, which I think tells the story purely visually and with visual language. I think those two scenes are actually quite well done. But also there's like this outlandish tone that's brought up almost like immediately. There's one actress I think sucks. I'll say that much. And I am not a fan of Devon Aoki. And, she's an F2F alum. We talked about her in our Mutant Chronicles episode. But Devon Aoki as Kasumi, it's unfortunate that the dramatic crux of the movie has to rely on her. So that's my biggest issue. But honestly, Jamie Presley is fantastic. I love Jamie Presley. Like, obviously sexy as hell. But in the movie, she is absolutely, like, you totally believe that she kicks ass.
Jamie's the real deal. She really fights hard, I mean, they all do. But, I mean, I in particular think that Jamie's like, she's really tough.
I've had most of my scenes with Jamie, and she is a fighter, trained for the past 8 years as a boxer and as a kickboxer. I think a lot of people are going to be surprised when they see the end product. The girls are tough.
She got ripped for this movie. She has been kickboxing and boxing and stuff for years before, so this was like right in her wheelhouse, and I think she took it very seriously. She has great comedic timing. I loved every time she was on screen. I thought her relationship with Kevin Nash was really funny. There was a couple bits in there about her sharing a bed with Holly Valance's character Christy, which was an ongoing joke that I thought was quite funny.
Dad, not now. I'm in my underwear.
Which I hate. Well, you can't just sleep in the nude like me. I'll never know.
Oh my God.
No, Dad, she's just another fighter. We're just sleeping together.
Yeah, I can see that.
No. I mean, we're not sleeping together. We're just sleeping.
Well, it seems to be like my baby girl's found herself a special friend. We'll settle up tomorrow, sweetie. Nice to meet you, miss.
Oh, it's Christy.
Tina's real name's Christina.
Dad!
Yeah, I think this movie is kind of a blast, like in the vein of Charlie's Angels. It's got the pop art type of color scheme to it. It's on location. It's got the crazy CGI stupidity to it. But it does feel like a movie that people were having a good time making. It doesn't seem like a slog. It wasn't a slog to watch. And I actually was like quite surprised that this was enjoyable trash versus like unwatchable junk, So like, I think there was like a lot to have, like there's a lot of fun here. Like I don't think it's as good as Full Throttle. Like I'll say that right now before Trev, maybe jumps down my throat about it. I don't know what he's going to think about this, but I definitely had a lot of fun with this. A surprising amount. I enjoyed it. Trev.
Man, it's hard to state how happy and relieved I am right now. Because
really?
I really came into this episode expecting, I thought you guys would maybe hate it, and I was like ready to say like, I hear everything you guys are saying, but you just cannot get me to hate this movie. And
no, it's awesome.
I'm so glad I don't have to, because it's this. I think you said it just exactly. Both of you said it exactly right. This is a movie that just 100% knows what it is. And I 100% agree. It's the best movie we watched in this series. It's the only movie we watched so far that actually feels like an adaptation of a fighting video game.
Yes.
Like it's actually like saying, hey, it's maybe not getting getting the story exactly right. But as I said, I watched that video and it's pretty close. It's close enough and to pass muster, but also it's actually giving us a tournament that allows us to have multiple fights.
Finally.
And I do think quite a number of the fights are good. There's some shaky things here and there. Corey Yuen is kind of under the limitations and expectations of Hollywood filmmaking, which is different than what he was able to do in Hong Kong. And obviously we can talk about that. He's also not working. I wouldn't say the performers he's working with in this are Jet Li or Stephen Chow or Andy Lau so he's having to mask that a little bit more through his quick cutting style. But he is really good at that. And he does create a number of really entertaining action sequences, but beyond that, the movie is just so knowingly silly, So this comes back to what we said about Street Fighter: Legend of Chun-Li, Chris, when we talked about why the sudden appearance of like fireballs bothered us in that movie, because it's like, oh, this movie's trying to be so grounded and it's trying to be so realistic, and then suddenly you'll have, ironically enough, Robin Shu, who pops up in this. You'll have his character in Legend of Chun-Li create like a Hadouken, create a fireball, right? And everyone's just like, huh, and like no reaction to it. This is a movie that the opening scene has Devon Aoki as Kasumi, going rogue from her like kingdom. She's a queen or whatever, but she decides to leave to go look for her missing brother, and she's told you can't leave. If you leave, you're basically betraying your clan. The guards won't let you leave, and she has to like run over all of them and then jump out of the fortress into this like long midair leap off a cliff. She's racing towards the ocean, and then her like cloak flies off to reveal that she actually has been preparing for this, and even though there was no indication of this earlier, she has like a hang glider attached to her back. And instantly so she gets the hang glider going, and then like the DOA spinning invitation like ninja star comes flying at her, inviting her to the tournament, and right away you go like, oh, okay, this movie is not only stupid, but it knows it's stupid.
Yes.
And that's the important distinction. And if the movie knows it's stupid and makes it clear right off the bat, then I'm able to just, settle in, enjoy myself, and just take the movie at its stupid level and just have a good time. And this movie isn't asking for anything more. This movie knows what you're here to see. This movie knows you are here to ogle sexy women, and it certainly gives you that. But it also knows you're here to just have a good time with like a crazy fighting movie with this like, this wushu fighting style that was so popular at the time in films like Charlie's Angels and The Matrix, and, obviously Crouching Tiger popularizing it. So giving us these kind of gravity-defying, kung fu battles with sexy women, with, decent enough humor, with a crazy plot, but again, it knows the plot is crazy. So yeah, I mean, I had a blast with this as well. I just think it's a lot of fun. It's not like, I don't think any of us are here to call this a masterpiece of cinema, but we're here to say, get some beers, get some friends. You're gonna, I can't imagine being like angry that you watch DOA, Dead or Alive.
Jackie, do you like Mortal Kombat? Like, do you like the director Paul W.S. Anderson? Do you like the Resident Evil movies and all that?
I am a little bit behind on that. I think I first saw a Resident Evil movie with Trevor when I first moved to New York a couple of years ago. But I don't really spend a lot of time in this world. But let me know when we're ready to go through my really fulfilling my promise as the woman to sort of go categorically, because there's a couple of points I kind of want to bring up and address.
Right before you do, I wanted to point out that we had talked about Mortal Kombat being like the standard of video game movies for so many years. Unfortunately, it's kind of bloodless, but it is still a total blast. Trev, did you notice at the end credits that Paul W.S. Anderson is a producer?
Yeah, and Jeremy Bolt is his producing partner. So yeah, like the
Resident Evil guys.
Yeah, the Resident Evil guys are behind this, and you can feel it, right? Yeah. Like this has the Paul W.S. Anderson stank on it, which I mean lovingly, because Paul W.S. Anderson is one of our great schlock lovers and appreciators out there. And again, so you can definitely feel the same thing I love about the Resident Evil movies, which again I would never call great movies, but I love that series, and that's very similar to how I feel about this one. Yeah.
Jackie, the floor is yours now.
Got it. Well, I want to sort of open the floor to discuss first camp. So there's an essay I had to read about this in grad school, but cutting to the chase of it being, is it stilted on purpose? Is it funny? I think the opening dialogue that was very exposition heavy, very direct. My first note was like Phantom Menace, in terms of like what it felt like.
That's funny.
And when the jump that Trevor described occurred, my boyfriend let out a very deep sigh. But I gave him a really sharp look on the couch because I was kind of like, do you not get it? Like,
Totally,
it's like, I was very, but then he quickly like had a blast as well. And I don't want to say he had a blast because the movie was designed around him. The movie was just a blast. But when I brought up my sort of opening salvo that I was reading a lot of comments online about this movie because I really wanted to go to, no offense, but like white, cis, straight guys in like maybe like 2011, 2012 era where it's sort of like far enough away from the movie that they were going to like sort of discuss why it flopped.
Sure.
But we hadn't sort of gone through the cycle of Marvel movies really gaining traction, being really fantastic, and then sort of rotting over time. I can't comment too deeply on that entire arc, but in terms of just our willingness as audiences to go see something fantastical and action but silly and in the tone that they're sort of going for. But I watched this guy's video and he hated it, and he said all of the things that Trevor was apparently afraid of we were going to say, just like,
right,
isn't this exploitative, and like, weren't these lesbian jokes really messed up, and like, I can't believe, like, how dumb was this? And it was interesting because people were really duking it out in the comment section, and obviously like from the time period that the video posted, but also like years later people revisited it, and I kind of wanted to go through some of those points.
That type of person, though, isn't there a little bit of white knightism there, though?
Yeah, he definitely was trying to, like, it sounded like he was trying to be an advocate for women. And, like, so, like, don't you hate this, ladies? But I don't know. I love a hot lady kicking ass.
Well, and that's what I mean.
Because
I've seen the same criticism you did, because I did a little bit of a deep dive just like you did. Is like, why is this a 4.8 on IMDb? Why is it at like the bottom of the barrel on Letterboxd? Why are some of the like these YouTube reviewers from 10 years ago when they put up the video, why are they coming at it from such a serious point of view? And I think a lot of it has to do with, obviously, people just don't get camp, which is something that I think you're getting at. And it's something that I discuss with some of my friends here at home a lot, is some people just don't get that something is camp. And then also there's that weird incel-y mentality of, well, I'm an ally for women, so let me speak for them. And they are misplaced in their agenda from the start. So when they do make that bit about lesbians, that lesbian joke, which I thought was actually quite progressive, because right away her dad is accepting of it right away.
That's what I was about to say. There's nothing homophobic about that joke at all.
That actually feels better.
Careful, baby. Sweetie, I've come at a bad time again, haven't I? Does Christy know about you too?
Dad.
But I saw the same video of like, how, pedestrian, and oh my God, aren't we past this? And I'm like, sometimes you can still make jokes about things if they are funny. And I think that came from a good place,
Yeah, and I can't speak for lesbians, but
I can.
would agree.
I don't know if but I can.
But yeah, I too also thought it was like very progressive seeming in that it wasn't derogatory in tone.
No.
That it was kind of like funny, but in a world in which we completely accept homosexuality, this is a funny jest kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Funny because it's normal, and that normalization, like it wasn't punching down and like sort of having to gesture at this female cast going like, well, someone's going to make the joke, so we might as well make it bad. Totally. It was just kind of like, that's kind of cute, and it was fine. But again, my very selective grain of salt opinion. But I have 3 quotes from like the comment section I wanted to sort of just float and have you guys respond to. So here was the first one, which is sort of, I'll call it the distracting critique. After all, Sarah Connor didn't walk around in a bikini, and neither did Ripley or Princess Leia, except that one time.
Okay. Are we just commenting right after the statements?
Correct.
Okay, I hate that because people can still be sexy and cool and holy fuck, guys, get it together. Like it's okay for women to be sexy, you know? As a cisgendered man who likes women, you know, I like women. It's okay for them to. It's okay that Jamie Presley wears a bra and jean shorts. She looks fucking hot in it, and she knows it, and that's cool. And you don't have to apologize for this weird only strong women have to have buzz cuts and machine guns and tattered, you know, cargo pants. You know what I mean? Even though that is sexy in its own right, there's different, as you said before, there's a spectrum of attraction. There's a spectrum of insightful about yourself. I just find that complete projection bullshit, and Trev knows that stuff makes me fuming and annoyed. So anyway, that's my comment.
And I mean, I get it. Like, yeah, I mean, yes, that's right. Like, Ripley didn't have to be in a bikini, and neither did Sarah Connor. But guess what? This movie isn't Terminator or Alien, and these characters aren't Ripley and Sarah Connor. And it is getting back to the idea of what he said is like, it doesn't have to be just one or the other.
Exactly.
And I think Chris is absolutely right. The only reason you would have a problem with this is if any of these actresses were being asked to do something they didn't want to do. But I think these actresses all are having a blast making this. And I think I've seen plenty of interviews with actresses, and again, this doesn't have to be all of them. If it's not the way they feel, fine, then they will not, then they shouldn't be in this movie, and no one should expect them to have to be in a movie like this. But I definitely have seen many actresses say, like, I do like being sexy on screen, and I think I can still be tough and be sexy, and it's fun to be sexy, and it is. Everybody, like, people like to be desired, right? Like,
exactly.
And by the same token, I mean, look, male action stars should be ogled as well. You know, to go back to the Transporter, there's an amazing sequence in the Transporter where, before a fight, Jason Statham, for seemingly no reason, just like takes his shirt off and like covers himself in oil so that he can like slide around the floor. And and I remember watching that movie with a few friends, and just kind of like the reaction to like, ooh, you know, and from multiple genders, and being like, yes, see, like, more action stars need to just do this, like, right? They like sexualize yourself the same way Hollywood expects women to be sexualized, and then it's an equal playing field, and we're all good. But it's totally fine both ways, and it's just fun, and it is sexy. Why not?
Yeah. Trev's on record on this podcast about hanging dong. There should be more dong.
There should be. Yeah, there should be more male nudity in movies. Yeah.
So there's another comment, just $1 Million Baby did it right. And I feel like that sort of falls along the exact same vein that you two both described.
If you're watching DOA Dead or Alive expecting $1 Million Baby.
Oh, fucking get out of town, you know?
Okay, so the next comment I wanted to bring up was somebody said, this movie is what the term guilty pleasure was meant to describe. Thoughts on that?
That I can understand if you are still in the realm of feeling shameful about watching stuff like this.
Yeah.
And I think, Trev has way more experience with, like, quote unquote, as I said, enjoyable trash like this. Mm-hmm. There's nothing wrong with movies like this. Like, not everything is $1 Million Baby. You know, it's fine to have something that is so outlandishly silly and sexy. I'm still on record of saying some of my favorite movies, quote unquote, that would, be described as a guilty pleasure is, like, I love Coyote Ugly. I fucking love Bring It On, the first one. Like, those are movies to me that are just like, those are 4-star movies. and they're 4-star movies for me, and I'm not ashamed to say it. So I think the term guilty pleasure is an interesting one to me because I know I've used it so much in my past, but also now I just like what I like, and I've seen so many movies like this that they're made to have discussions like we're having right now. They're made to kind of laugh and enjoy,
Yeah, I feel the same way about that. I think because I've gone through the same journey. I think it's something Chris and I have even talked about, where I think that's also a term that I'm sure I used a lot when I was younger to like define the kind of movies Chris is talking about. That Jackie, I'm a huge proponent of. I mean, Jackie has joined me and my other friends on many of our, as we call it, shitty movie night. Nights where we get to get together and watch bad movies, and I love that. And I definitely would say guilty pleasure in the past, but that's a term that I don't like anymore. I don't mind that comment that you shared, Jackie, because that still feels like closer to a positive review. But yeah, I would just reach out to that person and say, don't feel guilty about it. Like, you don't like guilty pleasure is a term I understand, but also it's like one that, I think it seems unnecessary anymore because like I don't feel guilty about liking a movie like DOA or Charlie's Angels Full Throttle. There's no guilt there. It's just an acknowledgement that, yes, sometimes I want to watch $1 Million Baby, and sometimes I want to watch Schindler's List, and sometimes I want to watch Sophie's Choice, and sometimes I want to watch hot women in bikinis punching each other in the face, and I don't need to feel guilt. We are all a spectrum here, so it's all good.
Yeah, like I said, hot, scantily clad blondes kicking ass. Like, who doesn't want to see this? And then I said, I guess lots of people, though, because it didn't make any money.
Yeah.
All right, and so the final comment I have for this impromptu segment that I have started on your show.
By the way, Jackie, let me say, Jackie, this is a fantastic segment. I love this. This is such a great idea that was totally impromptu that you came up with. This is fantastic. Go on.
Okay, well, the final prompt in the comment section, someone said, I just don't see the problem with valuing someone for their appearance so long as you're not insisting girls have no value outside of that.
What? But what? Like, the movie's not hyper focused on their attraction. Like, it is, but it isn't.
You want to zoom in now on that clip where they grab the pants and we are revealed the tramp stamp?
The movie, obviously, visually is very interested in their appearance.
And I play that clip on repeat, Jackie, just so you know, my screensaver.
Well, cinema is a visual medium. So, I mean, there's a lot of videos about, like, in Transformers, Megan Fox's character might be saying pretty fantastic things, but because the camera is pulled so tight on her chest that it's speaking louder than the dialogue. So, like, we could talk about that as a discussion, but I think it's just along the vein of valuing someone for their appearance, as long as there's no value outside of that, is not great. So you see what I mean?
Like complete cardboard cutout looks and TNA.
Yeah, like judging the book for its contents, but also the cover. You may admire the cover.
I would say that I think a lot of people that we're speaking to did that with this movie without getting it. Like, yes, you have the close-up of the tramp stamp. Yes, you have all of the scantily clad, visuals. Yes, you have them playing beach volleyball, but as you stated in the beginning of your main thoughts was they still feel like real girls, real women they all three have a plot line. They have something they're striving for. And I think you have to go into a movie like this already thinking that to take that after the credits roll. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Like, I think you're going in with a preconceived notion of looking at the cover of a bunch of girls with bras on being like, oh my God, this is going to be horn dog central. But then when you really watch it, you're like, oh no, there's more to this.
Well,
I mean, horn dog central is, oh, sorry.
I was going to say, when you guys discuss why it failed and your opinions, I feel like that will come up. But again, I would push back on your comment of like, how did the movie at the time want you to go into it? Like, what were the audience expectations?
And that's where I come. That's where. Sorry, so I'm sorry to cut you off, Trev. But the reason why I brought up earlier the timeline of that beach volleyball game is that's, I think, where the problem lies. I think that beach volleyball spinoff of this game, Dead or Alive, was the hottest fucking thing, in the genre. In 2003, then this movie gets greenlit. Then it's coming out. And then they show the marketing with them on a beach, them playing volleyball. And right away, you're getting the preconceived thoughts and feelings that, okay, this is really leaning into the sleaze. And I think that was the problem. And like you said, maybe we're jumping far ahead, but that is why that preconceived notion happened. Now, Trev, I got that out of the way. You go. Sorry.
Well, I was just because you said the horn dog central thing, and obviously this movie is like, it's conscious of that, and it's definitely marketed that way. But I think the important distinction is this is silly sexiness, and it's like it's silly exploitation and not gross exploitation. And as someone who, Chris, you won't be surprised to hear, I've definitely watched plenty of movies that lean more into the gross exploitation and the kind of dismaying, like, oh my God, this like just feels like scummy. And I think this movie always feels like frivolous and fun and not scummy in the way it is depicting its exploitation. And like I said, I think you can just feel like the fun that everyone is having with it. Now, granted, like that, that it could still, we are still looking at this through like the lens of a male filmmaker and everything. So I get it, but I want to I'm actually going to push back against something both you said, but in regards to just still making a compliment. So, because both of you said like, well, but the women here aren't just sex symbols. They're like actual characters. I would argue they're mostly pretty terrible characters. I
don't know if we said they were fully fledged characters though. I think they have a journey of some kind.
Yeah. My defense to that is like all the men in this are terrible too. It's just a dumb movie. Like every character is dumb. Sure. Like the dialogue for every character is stupid. The movie is stupid at its base level. But as Jackie did say, and as you echoed, Chris, it is true that the women, yes, they are sexy. Yes, the movie's telling us they're sexy. Yes, it's definitely showing us they're sexy. But they are also each shown as like a very capable person in like their profession or whatever, right? Like Kasumi is a badass ninja warrior and the leader of this whole clan. Christy is this like very effective thief who's able to fool many, many men, and kind of always get the best of them. Tina is proven to be like she's trying to get out from her dad's like shadow and prove that she's like the best professional wrestler. And as the movie goes on, you see that she does have that skill. So like, yeah, it is. You can say this is that like the most simplistic version of like female empowerment, but sure. I mean it's still there, and it's still in a movie that's like having fun with it. And again, I've just never felt opposed to that. Maybe it's because I grew up watching like the Roger Corman kind of movies with Pam Grier that did the same thing, that allowed them to be sexy but still be badass. And I still think there's something to be said for that. It's not that it's the only kind of representation you want, but I don't think it means you need to get rid of this kind of representation either. There's definitely a place for it.
I think I want to push back on your pushback of his pushback of my pushback, because I wouldn't say the characters are terrible. They're video game characters. So going back to some of your... in this series, you've discussed Capcom sort of struggling with the idea of just understanding its property for what it is and letting it be silly and ridiculous. Why can the character fly? Because they can fly. Because we wanted a character that can fly, and this is the guy who flies. There you go. So when you're doing that sort of shorthand, when a character appears on screen with a American flag bikini and a cowboy hat, I don't have to go, I wonder what her story is going to be. The fact that beyond that, she has an internal struggle about being this world-class wrestler who wants to be perceived as a real fighter, because at her core, she's not pretending. She's not a fake. She's the real deal. That's like taking a two-dimensional character and bringing almost a third dimension, like a half dimension, which is way more than they needed to do in many respects. But it was, again, I don't know what was on the page compared to what the actress brought forth. And again, this applies to multiple characters, except for, I guess, our main one, which Chris can discuss his grievances there. But
I'm with Chris on that.
Just like, okay. But just like this idea of they're real people. And I was going to say my absolute favorite scene is when the fight breaks out. Sorry, I actually don't remember their names. So in my head, it's like, blonde camo guy is fighting our Japanese princess, and they bust in the room where the assassin has just had sex with Max, and we'll get into him in a minute.
Where he cocks his arms. Oh man, they beat Mission Impossible to that by
But it was her facial expression. I was watching her with the sheet up over her chest, laughing her ass off, and like the movie paused to get her reaction to how the fight was going. And every time her face, because first they're like, oh God, we got to get out of the way. And then she's like, what a good fight. Oh, maybe, like, do they even know that we fucked? Like, just these dimensions were just so fun to watch, which we can also get into what is the point of DOA if there's no audience. But as a performance in this internal world of fighters, having other characters be spectating the fights and letting their personality traits interact in these different spaces, which obviously you won't be able to do in a video game setting, was fun. And I thought those moments made it more interesting and cool.
That is something that I totally agree with, because I know I just said Mortal Kombat from 96, right? 96, Trev?
The movie?
The movie,
Yes,
yeah,
I want
the
to say
movie.
95 or 96.
95,
yeah.
okay. So that movie, again, we say such good things, but there's never any spectators to the fights. In this movie, I found it so funny and so interesting for the reasons that you're saying, is that they will be having like breakfast, you know, at like a buffet line or something, and all of a sudden their wristwatch will go off, and you're like, holy shit, Kasumi's fighting, Ryu, let's just say. They don't, but let's just say that happens. And then all of a sudden, oh, you have to fight literally right now. And then people either move, they spectate, they watch, they get out of the way. Things break in obviously in the environment, just like the game. You're hearing sound effects from the game. You're getting health bars, just like the game. There's so much energy happening in the foreground, the background, everywhere on screen. And I know this sounds like I'm talking like DOA is some, like Crouching Tiger or something, but it's not. However, there's life to this movie, just like what you're saying, Jackie, is that, yes, there's a fight that we're supposed to be watching, but yet your eye is still drawn to the beautiful Holly Valance in her bed, laughing and like watching what the fuck is going on in front of her. And I think that's just such a great character moment, but then also just part of the, I hate this term because it sounds so lame, but just mise en scene, you know? It's like everything's happening on screen for a reason. And if that was an actual direction for Holly Valance, or if she was just like, holy shit, what kind of movie are we making? Either way, it works, you know?
I will say though, you pointed out the thing about like their watch will go off and it's like, oh my god, we have to drop everything and fight. Yes, except for the times when they don't, right? So I mean, if we are going to be like, if we're going to treat this movie real for a moment, and like obviously we all enjoyed it, we all had fun, but it does have its problems, and I mean, and I guess it's funny to like attack anything logically when we are praising the movie for its silliness. But I think Chris, you and I are both proponents of like even a silly movie should follow some kind of interior logic.
Yeah, my rule of life.
And I will say on like the rule alarm thing, like the movie doesn't even always necessarily follow its own rules it's set up about what DOA is. Like it's very, like Jackie's absolutely right that it's just bizarre to even sell this idea of a martial arts tournament where no one is watching the fights really necessarily. I mean, obviously they're being filmed on the island for the enjoyment of Donovan, but beyond that, there's no audience. But beyond that, he also says at the beginning that exact thing, right? Once you're paired with another fighter on your bracelet, you have to fight. And except later we have a scene where Tina and Zach, the DJ, are paired off, and she wants to fight right then, and he says, well, we can't ruin this party. And then they're like, okay, well, let's just meet up again tomorrow and fight. So then we see them kind of establishing their own rules. And there's also one where he's like, I know when he's explaining the rules at the beginning, Donovan says, fights only end when you knock out your opponent. But when Tina has to fight her own dad, in a scene I do love, but she changed the rules, right? And she says, well, let's do this to where whoever gets knocked off the raft is the loser. And so it's like, okay, so she's able to set the times of her own fights. She's able to set the like parameters of her own fights. And the movie never quite explains that.
Right.
And I would say my other kind of like, I don't want to call it a nitpick or whatever, but I do think the movie kind of blasts through the tournament a little too fast, to where there's a lot of fights we aren't shown, or we're only shown like the final knockout punch. And I get it. It's like, it's just an 80-minute movie or whatever with multiple characters. As we've talked about this problem with this movie, trying to fit in a lot of characters. But especially in like the first like round of the tournament, it seems like a lot of it goes by without us really getting a sense of these other characters and getting to see those fights. And obviously if you're coming to this movie looking for action, sometimes you feel like you're getting shortchanged there a little bit. So I just wanted to point out those two issues with the tournament element of it.
Yeah,
I definitely wanted to ask about that. Sorry, just because you mentioned in the previous game movies that the characters, there's so many. How many do you foreground versus background? I thought from my perspective, not knowing the game or anything, that was sort of like the best they could do. they paid homage to the characters. They had their names, their outfits, and we got to see some of their fighting style, which is probably, I mean, obviously there's intricate plot lines that this movie was never going to get to anyway, but we sort of get a sense of what they would be like in the game. But we learn the characters we're focused on and we stick to them. But yes, it's crazy that they're going to postpone a fight to not interrupt a party, but they won't postpone a fight that's happening during a typhoon on the beach when they could have gone inside. But to our earlier point, like, most of my notes are questions, and the plot holes that you allow to be skimmed sort of depend on how much good faith you're bringing into the movie as a whole. And we can go into a couple, like, why are the Japanese characters speaking English, but the pirates are speaking Chinese? Things like that. I don't want to open that can of worms too much, but just the idea of, okay, I'm going to let that slide because who cares? And this actually infringed slightly on the enjoyment of the film.
I think because Devon Aoki can barely recite her lines properly, anyways. That I don't know if they're gonna give her Chinese.
Yeah, we don't like making fun of actors, but Devon
Aoki is bad, and it like I said, it is there's nothing more ironic and telling than the first time you meet this character and she's holding a cricket. And it's funny because like they changed her character from the game. Speaking of like, first of all, Jackie, I'll give you credit for more credit. In our group thread, you had sent us a YouTube reel, and it had shown the characters in their game form and, with their movie counterpart, and just to see how accurate the movie is. And guess what? Very accurate. But Kasumi's character in the game is apparently very like open and compassionate and like loving and just like open. In this movie, she's like really cold and stern. And I think that's just because Devon Aoki is like that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't like making fun of actors, but it is a issue for the movie to have the dramatic crux of the entire plot to be with her. And especially when Jamie Presley can do both comedy and drama. Like she's so good in anything that she's in. I'm not as familiar with Holly Valance, but I do know she was supposed to replace Kylie Minogue in the unmade Street Fighter sequel. So she at least has like a career of her own to come from, and she is really good in the movie as well. She's, like you said, your eye was drawn to her during a fight scene that didn't involve her, that actually involved Kasumi, which is funny. But that's some of the holes I'll poke in the enjoyment of the movie, just kind of piggybacking on what you're saying.
Yeah, because like people will sometimes maybe hear this and think like, why are you making fun of a bad performance in a movie that you're saying you like because it's bad? But it's different, right? Because like what we're like the elements that we're saying, it's not even so much bad, but like a silliness that like permeates the movie that we're responding to. But then Devon Aoki's whole plot line is the dramatic plot line of the movie, and she just doesn't have the goods here. No, and as she's getting blown off the screen by everyone else, like every scene partner she has is kind of acting circles around her, and she's just so like flat in this, and that's really disappointing since she is kind of the nominal lead. And even in, like, and then to just kind of also say more about what we were just talking, like if I was maybe a huge fan of the overall game franchise, maybe I'd be kind of disappointed in the way the kind of fast forward to the tournament does shortchange some of these other characters. I know like Li Fang, the other Chinese woman who we see, who kind of actually like looks like a little bit more visually like Chun-Li, as from what I understand, that's a really, really popular character in the series. And we see her like she has like almost, I don't even know if she has any lines, and we see her just get like immediately beat in her first fight. Yeah, and even like Donovan's like main like heavy, Bayman, the guy who wears like the little like beret, he's like, from what I learned today watching that video that goes through all 6 games, he's like a major character. He becomes a very, very important character, and all he does in this movie is he grunts. He's a grunt. He like grunts, and he's like kind of like a comedic heavy. So I mean, they're picking and choosing which characters to focus on, probably for the betterment of the movie, but maybe for the disappointment of some like hardcore DOA heads. I don't know. Even like a Yane, the purple haired ninja played by Natasha Malthy, who I know I don't have to tell either of you. I'm sure you both know that she is, of course, is the actress who took over the character of Blood Rain from Kristanna Loken for Blood Rain 2 and Blood Rain 3. Movies I own on DVD. I have the entire Blood Rain trilogy on DVD. But yeah, she's another one who is like, I think is like much more kind of dynamic and has a lot more to her in the games. And she's like, there's something Jackie just said earlier that kind of like, I was thinking of this character where she's talking about like trying to fit all the characters in. She's one that every time she pops up, you're like, oh, they just feel like they need her in here because she's like a popular character from the game. But she just keeps showing up to kind of be like a distraction. She's not really adding much to the plot.
I have a litany of sort of things that I wasn't going to let slide. So I'm just going to read them until one of you guys want to interrupt me.
Yeah, rattle them off.
Did they ever explain how Max got himself invited? We know why. The plot revealed that. But, like, how did he's just a thief, but he got himself invited? Okay. Why would she leave the volleyball game to get jumped? She was safer on the beach. Why did they think the tattoo would be a clue to getting into the vault? When was that set up?
Hey, jump in with the tattoo thing, okay?
They didn't just think it; they were right.
But there were multiple tattoos at play.
But the better question is, why would her dad tattoo the code for the vault on the back of her neck backwards? Is that like, is he worried he's going to forget it? And if he ever does, he's like, hey, daughter, come here and just stand by this mirror for a second.
I will say, though, that fight in the rain with the visual language coming back and forth for her memorizing the tattoo and thinking about it more while she's fighting was like awesome visual storytelling. Like I really like that scene. I think it's a really cool fight too. It uses a lot of that slow-mo that, like, I guess it uses slow-mo not as a distraction but as a storytelling technique. And I just loved the cutting back and forth for her, like, trying to remember, okay, think back to when, she kicked me in the head. And it would go back. And I thought it was a really cool idea. And then, of course, explains your tattoo. So, Jackie, lay off,
Oh, fair enough. Okay. I'll continue with my list. Why wouldn't you have better security on an island designed for fighters and assassins? So the vault was just in the lab?
Yes.
Why didn't they check the lab earlier? Let me see.
That's a good point. I have no rebuttal for that one. That's
the lock is a slide puzzle, and not just a slide puzzle, a 9-piece slide puzzle. I couldn't when that I did lose my mind when the vault lock revealed itself.
And it was like the most simplest one. Did love that part.
Does Helena live on this island? How had she never met the one lab employee, the only other person on the island who isn't a security guard?
That's good.
So when Tina wrestles, she's worried about it being fake, but her dad is also a wrestler, and no one questions if he's fake or he just doesn't have.
He's a man. That's the theme.
Whoa,
that's
whoa.
thematic. That's thematic.
Of course, I overlooked it.
And you needed 2 men to tell you, so I get it.
Fair enough. And then this is not a question. This is just commentary.
Sure.
I love the fact that Elena was able to fight the guy because she wasn't considered good enough to download her moves. So he didn't have the ability to telegraph what she might be able to do. I thought that was kind of cool. Mm-hmm. When our hacker posted to the CIA website, like we see him type in like www.cia.com or .org or whatever. .gov. Oh God. And that was enough to shut it down.
Yeah.
It's like, what is that music video where the woman is like texting, but it zooms in on her phone and it's an Excel spreadsheet that's open?
We need to talk about that whole sequence in the bad guy's plan. But first, I just want to point out, like, I don't know, did this one strike you at all? Like, you mentioned Helena not knowing Weatherby, who ends up becoming her love interest. But, like, Weatherby tells her at one point that he basically knows the whole story of how her dad was murdered. And he doesn't tell her that until it's, like, convenient to him. And, like, that doesn't bother her at all. They still end up like a couple, even though he's been keeping the knowledge of her father's murder from her for like their first few encounters. I thought that was definitely one that was like, what? But again, whatever.
Hey, that's a cat and mouse game, baby. That's what you got to do, you know?
If it's in real time, it's kind of like, hi, I'm really into you. Your dad was murdered. Do you want to go out? Like,
Yeah,
I don't know how do you do that well?
Yeah, Trev, that's not the play. I don't know. It's
Yeah,
you've been out of the game for a long time. That's not the play, brother.
But also, why would she believe him? There had to be some sort of rapport first.
Well, it's funny because when we first see that character, we see him like watching all like the women and all the fights, and like especially like they're doing the medical tests on them, and he's like watching all the security footage, and I legit thought for a moment that this character was going to be the movie's commentary on like almost like making fun of the DOA players. Like, look at this is the guy who's like ogling all the women, right? But it's like, well, actually, he becomes like a heroic, he's like the most heroic guy in the whole movie. So if that wasn't any commentary, maybe they're like, yeah, you guys are all gross, but it's okay. You could still end up sleeping with like Helena and be the hero.
Yeah, and feeding off that, again, can we just get to Eric Roberts, please, and his villain plot and what the hell he's doing with nanobots and selling the technology, and oh my god, and also what a great, but I know I mentioned the Oakleys before, but what a great idea to hide Eric Roberts' stunt double. It's so smart, you know. Throw some
Well, first of all,
Oakleys and a wig.
just the fact that Eric Roberts is the villain in this. So I obviously got very excited because I always point to Eric Roberts as kind of the ultimate, like, he's the ultimate ghostwriter of good movies versus bad movies. He can walk in both worlds because this is just a guy who loves to work, and he makes like 60 movies a year. And obviously the majority of those are straight to video or like asylum movies where usually he's in like all his scenes are in one room. You can tell he just gave them like 4 hours. He's like, just film my entire coverage here. And then suddenly he'll pop up and like still up to this day, right? He'll pop up in something like The Dark Knight or like Babylon. And you're like, oh yeah, okay. Like the real directors still like to work with him too. You know, he's a real actor, so I kind of expected him in this to be like when he shows up and he gives the rules. I was like, oh, we're gonna get one of those Eric Roberts performances where he's just in a room, right? He's just the room bad guy. But we get a full on martial arts battle with him at the end, or at least with his stunt double.
Yes.
But that speaks to his bad guy plan, which I just want to highlight quickly is that we learned that the evil plan at play here is that at the beginning of the tournament he injects nanobots into all the fighters. And then eventually he captures a few of them and puts them in these pods where he then downloads the nanobots to a pair of glasses he's working, which then allows him to, when he fights someone, basically he gets like their fighting skills, but only in the sense that his glasses can like predict the next move of his opponent, allowing him to fight. But he, as we just said, he can't beat anyone whose moves he has not previously downloaded. So this is like the most useless skill possible. And there's the scene where he is sending that plan to like what we see on the screen is like 6 buyers around the world, and they're like, we gotta stop it. I'm thinking it's like, why? If you don't stop it, these 6 guys around the world learn how to inject nanobots into people and then be able to fight them. Like I think there's bigger problems in the world.
That's great.
It just was like the most ridiculous idea, to the point where like ultimately the way he's defeated is his glasses get knocked off. And it's like, man, he didn't even think to put like the band around the back of the glasses to keep them on your head when you fight. That's like the key to your bad guy plan.
That's great. Yeah, a hilariously evil plan.
Yeah,
and,
it makes no sense.
Yeah, very good. Very good.
But but Eric Roberts also seems to be having fun. So
again, everybody is. Like, I don't think there's, other than, I said what I said about, Devon Aoki, but I mean, even she seems like she's having a good time. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, it's not like nobody seems miserable making this movie. And we've seen a lot of miserable movies. Like Chun-Li, I'm sorry, a lot of those actors look like they were absolutely miserable being a part of that movie. So you got to give it credit where credit's due. And I again, going back to Jackie's comment segment, which we might steal and never give credit to her again. Is
I deserve it. It's fine.
Yeah. It is. Oh, where was I going with that? Going back to the comment section.
Sorry, complimenting me was enough to derail your entire train of thought.
This is why we don't bring many women on the show, I guess. I don't know.
Well, you're getting me back for saying that Trev sent the trailer instead of you.
It's true. I can't remember what I was going to say.
the comment section, you loved it. I'm so ingenious.
It's
there was
true.
3 comments.
I did say all those words. No, I guess what I'm getting at is that it just shows you that there's a fundamental like misalignment of what people went into this movie preconceived, like with their preconceived notions for what it was actually trying to do and say, if anything at all, you know what I mean? And again, that is okay. Not every movie is Schindler's List. You know, a movie like DOA does what it sets out to do, you know, and that's something that, you know, the late great Roger Ebert used to say, and that's why I adopt his 4-star rating system, much to Trev's chagrin. But when a movie sets out to do or does what it sets out to do, it's just a pretty amazing thing. And not that this movie's amazing, but man, it's a fucking fun, entertaining, schlocky time. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's not a guilty pleasure. Sometimes things are just pleasures, and that's good.
I have 2 final thoughts. yeah, I agree. But my 2 final thoughts. Okay. 1, I just forgot to say this earlier. I really think this movie had guts not explaining what DOA was fully until we got to the island. Because was it slightly confusing? Sure. But most movies today are just not confident enough in their storytelling to let that information unfold naturally. Like, I haven't seen the Minecraft movie or whatever, but there's like the Red Letter Media video talked about how like there's that exposition dump at the top where it's like they're like, okay, this is the movie you're about to see, here's why we're doing it. And it's that second screen writing process of if people are just gonna have their phones out, who cares? DOA was kind of like, all right, we got hot chicks, something's going on, you'll stick around to figure it out, we believe it. So kudos to the movie, loved that. It was unbelievably refreshing.
Jackie, I just saw the Mission Impossible movie. I just saw the newest one. I don't know if you're a fan of that franchise, but get ready for half of a 3-hour movie doing exactly what you're saying not to do.
Oh no. Just explaining what it is?
Not only explaining, but a literal clip show of things it's explaining. Anyways, go on.
Amazing. Storytelling is in its finest era.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
My last thing, as I warned Trev I was going to do this earlier, I'm just going to cite the Bechdel test. So there's someone is tracking this information. Does a movie pass the Bechdel test? I'm going to read what it says. So starting from the top, what is the Bechdel test? It was created by a cartoonist as a joke that sort of became this measuring stick of how woke a movie is or how it treats women. The requirements are threefold. You need at least 2 named women characters. They talk to each other about a topic that isn't a man. And in this movie, someone gives their support as to why it passes. The main characters talk to each other about several topics that do not involve a man, like what they're going to do with the prize money if they win, how to climb a wooden tower in order to reach a tournament grounds in time, acupuncture, having trouble sleeping, and even a volleyball game. That is all.
There you go.
I mean, if that volleyball game is not the ultimate representation of strong feminist cinema, then I don't know what it is.
Is that your final word on the subject?
No, my final word is very similar to what Chris is saying. It's just that, yeah, I mean, look, this is a very, very silly movie, but it's also a movie that is made to be a silly movie and knows it and goes for it. It does deliver on its premise and its promise in ways that neither Street Fighter movie did. I think this movie knew exactly what it was from the beginning. You know, am I thrilled that this is the last movie Corey Yuen directed? No. Do I believe this hits the heights of the kind of action scenes he was able to deliver in his earlier filmography? No. Does his direction still elevate what is kind of like a cheap little, sexploitation, DTV action movie based on a booby video game franchise? Yes, very much. Like, the action is still very, very fun in this. It's still really well designed. There are a number of fun performances, even if our lead isn't the strongest. I haven't been singing the praises of Jamie Presley in this nearly enough. I've been letting Chris take the lead on that, but she is just a total blast in this, as she always is. I also agree that I love the scenes with her and Kevin Nash. I actually think he vanishes from the movie a little too early.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually watching this thinking Hollywood kind of missed the boat on Kevin Nash. I think he's just got such a great screen presence. And he's very, very funny, very, very charismatic. I wish we had gotten more kind of roles from him in general. Man, we didn't even mention that the score is like the first Hollywood score from Junkie XL, which again I wouldn't call it one of his best scores, but it's very it is very propulsive and very appropriate for the movie. Like, so even he's having fun.
It's also very similar to the actual DOA score. It's like a very similar vibe and everything. So he actually kind of nails it. So
yeah. But I think the Charlie's Angels like Full Throttle like comparison is like very perfect. Or for like another Jamie Presley like movie of this era, Torque, another movie I love. Like, just these movies are just super over the top and like aren't taking themselves seriously, so you're not expected to take them seriously. That's the best approach for something like this. And so even though we've pointed out some like problems with the script, some of the characters being a little simplistic, that's not what anyone's coming to DOA for, and this movie understands it. So you are coming to DOA to see attractive people in badass fights and just some like over the top physics defying silliness, and this movie delivers on all of that. And so yeah, I like I said, no one could make me hate this movie. It's just too much of a good time.
We ask ourselves this question at the end of every episode, but I'm actually just going to let Jackie answer it because I'm sure she'll answer it for the both of us as well. Jackie, does DOA, Dead or Alive, did it deserve sequels?
I thought you were going to ask me about the dread test, and I had not thought that through. So I was like, shit, I don't know about that.
I don't know if it didn't pass it did not pass the dread test.
No.
But did it deserve a sequel? That's a good question. I mean, I would have enjoyed another one of these if it was along the same vein and they just did the sequel thing of bigger, more money, more silly, and then maybe some of the background characters were able to come into the fore, or they even played up the joke and included them just as little in the second one, but were more obvious about that. Anything like that. Like, as long as they didn't do like a scary movie level of, because as movies sort of progressed, comedy films in this time period it was sort of touch and go as to how something would age well from there on. So I wouldn't want this one to be tarnished by sequels, but at the same time, I don't know. I didn't see it the first time around, so maybe I'm not the right person to comment.
I mean, honestly, the sequel tease we get is good. All the characters like united together, having to fight the army of ninjas, and like, I mean, that alone is like, I would definitely watch more of that. So yeah.
Yep. No, I agree. But I understand what you mean, Jackie, about how does it get to like either gross or does it really in the wrong hands? It does, sink into the basement of depravity. You know what I mean? And really too much sexploitation. You know what I mean? I think maybe that's what you're getting at. But I would have loved to see another version of this. Bring back the cast. The cast was great. Less one.
Did we discuss why it failed to franchise? Did we talk about it enough?
I think
3 hours.
No, I think what I said was there's a fundamental misalignment of people's expectations, and also because of that fucking beach volleyball video game. I'm telling you, people at this time in 2006 knew this franchise as jiggle physics. Okay, so it just had an uphill battle and wasn't taken seriously, and probably didn't get the best distribution. I don't know.
There's also somebody said, we did mention that this is the last movie Corey Yuen directed, and that's significant because it's he still lived for quite a while after this. It's like, well, why did that happen? Why was this the last one? I think that whole like wushu inspired fighting style, especially in Hollywood movies, like was really starting to like flame out by this point too.
That too. That too.
Like after the Crouching Tiger and the Matrix, it was in everything. The Charlie's Angels movies being a great example of that, right? The Charlie's Angels movies, that's a franchise that had no call for that kind of fighting style. They just put it in there because it was the cool thing of the moment. And by the time you get to 2006, people are already getting sick of it, and it's usually used as like a punchline. If it happens in a movie, it's like making fun of the fact that was the popular fighting style for a while. So people might have saw that in the trailer, oh God, more of the people like flying in the air and, you know, doing these, you know, death-defying, physics-defying leaps. Like, we've seen it all before. So that probably wasn't helping its case either.
That is a fantastic point. Yes, I didn't even think about that, but you're so right. You're so right. Okay, let's wrap it up. Next episode, sadly, Jackie will not be on the episode. I think me and Trev might have to suffer alone on that one, but we are looking at Tekken from 2010. So another fighting video game in the Fighting Video Lame series we're doing. Jackie, this was awesome. Like, so good. Like, I had a total blast, and I love that all three of us like had such a blast watching the movie too. This is so good.
I'm so happy you guys asked me back. Please bring me back when you do Aragon.
Yes,
or
that's
at any
the
other
one, right?
point. That's the one I'm so desperate to talk about. It was very formative. But I had a blast, like I said. I probably won't forgive you for having me accidentally Google jiggle physics on my work laptop. I hope nobody's notified in my company, because I was searching and I was just going, oh no, I shouldn't be doing that on this computer, but it was too late. So that's in a database somewhere now. But I had a great time. I love talking, and I'm so grateful to represent all of womankind for this very important broadcast.
It's funny. Usually Trev represents all women, so I'm glad you're actually here. So
yeah.
Well, you speak for the lesbians, so
it's true. I do speak. I'm on the top of you know. I was like, lesbian lane? I don't know where I was going with that. It's okay.
We need lesbian. Just say lesbian mountain. It sounds like something that would be in a DOA game. So just say it.
Lesbian mountains. No, just me.
Nope.
Okay. Jackie, where can people find you on the internet? I don't know what that sounds like. But tell people what you got going on.
I'm on the internet. Let's do it. On the site formerly known as Twitter, I am at JCC HARNIGA. Why did I spell it? Just JC Charniga. I think I'm on Blue Sky with a similar handle, or I'm not. I'm on Instagram, but it's private, so don't look for me there.
That's where she posts all her beach volleyball pictures. That's why.
Yeah.
Ayo.
Follow us at F2F Pod. That's at F2, the number 2 F Pod on all the socials. Like us there, like us everywhere. Join the tribe, hit that subscribe, and rate, review, whatever you do. Throw us a star rating, a review of some kind on your podcast app. That would be very beneficial to us. That's all we ask. We don't ask for money. Only 2 hours of your time every 2 weeks. So, Trev, what you got? Nothing?
Just Jackie, we'll see you again in 2 years.